there's a peculiar ache that seems to define our contemporary experience, a sense of being simultaneously more connected than ever before through technology and social media, yet profoundly isolated from something essential and nourishing that previous generations seemed to possess naturally. You might recognize this feeling in the moments when you're scrolling through endless feeds of curated lives while sitting alone in your flat, or when you're surrounded by colleagues in an open-plan office yet feel utterly unknown and unseen, or when you achieve the career milestone or relationship goal you've been working towards for years, only to discover that the satisfaction lasts mere days before the emptiness returns with renewed intensity. This modern disconnection isn't simply a personal failing or a sign of depression that can be medicated away. Actually, a symptom of our civilization's profound separation from the deeper sources of meaning, purpose, and authentic connection that Sri Aurobindo recognized over a century ago as humanity's most urgent spiritual crisis. The revolutionary nature of Sri Aurobindo's philosophy becomes immediately apparent when we understand that he saw this sense of disconnection not as evidence of human weakness or moral decline, but rather as the inevitable growing pains of a species that's evolving beyond the limitations of purely material existence towards conscious participation in the cosmic intelligence that orchestrates all life. The graphic designer spending 12-hour days creating advertisements for products she doesn't believe in whilst dreaming of art that might actually matter discovers that her creative dissatisfaction isn't a sign she's chosen the wrong career, but rather evidence that her soul is outgrowing the narrow purposes that consumer culture offers as sufficient reasons for existence. The financial analyst crunching numbers for investment portfolios whilst feeling increasingly hollow about contributing to wealth accumulation for people who already have more than they could spend in multiple lifetimes begins to recognize that his mathematical skills and analytical intelligence are seeking expression in service of purposes that align with his deeper values and humanity's genuine needs. This understanding completely transforms our relationship with the restlessness, anxiety, and sense of meaninglessness that characterize so much contemporary experience. Instead of viewing these feelings as problems to be solved through better time management, more effective antidepressants, or strategic career changes, we begin to recognize them as the soul's natural response to living in artificial separation from the interconnected web of consciousness that connects all beings and all phenomena in an ongoing dance of creative collaboration and mutual support. The social media manager, creating content strategies for brands whilst feeling increasingly disconnected from authentic human communication, starts to understand that her hunger for genuine connection isn't a personal inadequacy, but rather her consciousness rejecting the superficial interactions that digital marketing promotes as substitutes for real intimacy and shared purpose. The ancient wisdom that Sri Aurobindo drew upon, particularly from Vedantic philosophy and yogic practice, combined with his revolutionary insights about evolution and consciousness, offers something that contemporary self-help approaches and psychological theories consistently miss: the recognition that individual healing and collective transformation are not separate processes but different aspects of the same cosmic awakening. The NHS nurse working exhausting shifts in an underfunded hospital system, whilst watching preventable suffering multiply due to political decisions and resource allocation, discovers that her compassion fatigue isn't simply burnout that requires better work-life balance, but rather her soul's response to serving within systems that treat symptoms rather than addressing the social and spiritual conditions that create illness and healing in human communities. Perhaps most importantly, this philosophy reveals that the disconnection we experience in modern life actually contains within itself the seeds of our reconnection to something far more profound and nourishing than what we've lost. the museum curator organizing exhibitions about ancient cultures, whilst feeling nostalgic for times and places she's never experienced, begins to recognize that her longing isn't for the past itself, but for the sense of belonging to something larger than individual achievement and consumption that those cultures possessed. And that remains available to us when we learn to perceive the sacred dimension that underlies all existence, including our contemporary circumstances and relationships. This reconnection doesn't require abandoning modern conveniences, retreating to rural communes, or adopting ancient lifestyles that are no longer relevant to contemporary circumstances. Instead, it involves learning to recognize and align with the evolutionary intelligence that's seeking to express itself through the very complexity and apparent chaos of modern existence. The urban farming coordinator helping communities create food gardens on abandoned lots and rooftop spaces discovers that her work serves not only local food security, but also the deeper human need to participate consciously in the cycles of growth, nourishment, and renewal that connect us with the living earth and with each other in relationships of mutual care and interdependence. The revolutionary aspect of Sri Aurobindo's vision lies in its recognition that consciousness itself is evolving through human experience, using our individual lives as laboratories for discovering new forms of awareness, creativity, and collaborative intelligence that can address challenges no previous generation has faced. The renewable energy engineer designing solar panel installations for entire neighborhoods, whilst feeling overwhelmed by the scale of climate change, begins to understand that her technical work is actually participation in humanity's learning about how to live sustainably on Earth, and that her contribution matters not only for its immediate practical effects, but also for its role in the collective awakening to more conscious relationship with natural systems and planetary well-being. The profound healing that becomes available through Sri Aurobindo's philosophy emerges when we recognize that our sense of disconnection actually points toward our deepest spiritual nature, the part of us that knows we're meant for something far greater than the narrow goals and superficial satisfactions that consumer culture promotes as adequate reasons for living. This recognition doesn't diminish the reality of our current circumstances or invalidate the genuine difficulties we face in modern life, but rather provides a framework for understanding how these very challenges can become gateways to discovering our authentic purpose and our intimate connection with the evolutionary intelligence that's seeking to express itself through our unique talents, circumstances, and relationships. The occupational therapist helping elderly patients maintain independence and dignity, whilst navigating healthcare systems that often treat people as medical conditions rather than whole human beings, discovers that her most healing work happens when she approaches each person as a manifestation of the same consciousness that she recognizes as her own deepest identity. This understanding naturally leads to what we might call conscious participation, the practice of engaging with our daily responsibilities and opportunities as expressions of universal creativity, rather than burdens we must bear or achievements we must accumulate to validate our worth. The primary school teaching assistant working with children who have learning differences and behavioral challenges learns that her patience and innovative approaches emerge most naturally when she approaches each child as a unique expression of intelligence, seeking its own perfect forms of learning and growth rather than as problems to be fixed or controlled according to standardized expectations. The freelance photographer documenting community events and family celebrations discovers that her artistic vision becomes most authentic and effective when she approaches her work as service to people's need to see their lives as beautiful and meaningful rather than as opportunities to build her professional portfolio or artistic reputation. The ancient roots of this philosophy provide stability and depth that contemporary approaches to personal development often lack, whilst its revolutionary implications offer hope and direction that traditional religious teachings sometimes fail to provide for people navigating the complexities of modern existence. The community mental health counselor supporting individuals through depression, anxiety, and trauma recovery recognizes that lasting healing requires not only addressing psychological symptoms, but also helping people rediscover their connection to purposes and relationships that provide genuine nourishment for the soul rather than temporary relief from emotional pain. The sustainable architecture student, designing buildings that support both human well-being and environmental health, learns that creative innovation emerges most naturally when technical expertise serves deeper understanding of how physical spaces can either enhance or diminish people's connection with each other and with the natural world. This reconnection often begins with simple practices that help us recognize the extraordinary within the ordinary activities that comprise our daily existence. The postal delivery worker maintaining reliable service throughout diverse neighborhoods in weather conditions discovers that his work becomes most satisfying when approached as contribution to community connectivity and social trust, rather than merely completing assigned routes for monetary compensation. The veterinary receptionist coordinating appointments and supporting pet owners through their animals' health challenges learns that her administrative skills serve the deeper human need for compassionate care and reliable support during times of worry and uncertainty about creatures we love. Perhaps most beautifully, this philosophy reveals that the very technologies and systems that can seem to increase our disconnection actually provide unprecedented opportunities for conscious connection and collaborative service when approached with spiritual awareness and intentional purpose. The app developer creating digital tools for meditation and mindfulness practice combines technical programming skills with understanding of contemplative traditions, discovering that technology can serve spiritual development rather than replacing it when designed with genuine care for users' well-being and authentic growth. The customer support specialist helping people resolve technical difficulties with online banking and digital services learns that her problem-solving abilities and patience become most effective when she approaches each interaction as an opportunity to provide genuine assistance and human warmth within systems that can otherwise feel impersonal and frustrating. The transformative power of this understanding extends beyond individual healing to encompass our capacity to contribute meaningfully to collective challenges that seem overwhelming when approached from purely personal perspectives. The environmental impact assessor evaluating proposed developments for their effects on local ecosystems and community well-being approaches her work as service to the well-being of both human and natural communities, recognizing that individual projects participate in humanity's larger learning about how to live sustainably and harmoniously on Earth. The volunteer coordinator organizing community responses to homelessness and food insecurity discovers that effective service emerges when practical assistance serves deeper recognition of our fundamental interconnectedness and shared responsibility for creating conditions where all people can experience dignity, security, and opportunities for contribution and growth. This ancient yet revolutionary philosophy doesn't promise easy answers or quick fixes to the complexities of contemporary existence, but rather provides a foundation for approaching life's inevitable challenges with greater wisdom, creativity, and sense of purpose that can sustain us through difficulties whilst opening us to possibilities we might not have imagined from more limited perspectives. The hospice volunteer supporting families through the death of loved ones learns that her presence and practical assistance become most healing when informed by understanding of death as natural transition rather than failure or tragedy, creating space for love and meaning to flourish even in circumstances that might otherwise be dominated by fear and despair. You know, As I share these insights about reconnection and conscious participation, I'm struck by how this isn't really my message to deliver to you. It's actually our shared recognition of something that's been stirring in human hearts across all cultures and circumstances. This sense that we're meant for something deeper and more meaningful than what our current social systems offer as sufficient reasons for existence. If you're feeling this stirring too, if you recognize yourself in these descriptions of disconnection and the longing for authentic purpose, then you're already part of this quiet revolution of consciousness that's happening through ordinary people who are choosing to live from deeper sources of wisdom and service. This isn't just another spiritual channel asking for your subscription. It's a community of souls who understand that individual awakening and collective healing happen together, and that your unique journey of reconnection illuminates possibilities for all of us. I'd be deeply moved if you'd join our ongoing exploration by subscribing. But what touches my heart even more is knowing that your own process of finding meaning and authentic connection in modern life contributes to humanity's collective awakening to more conscious and compassionate ways of being together. What aspects of contemporary life have felt most disconnecting to you, and where have you found unexpected sources of meaning and genuine connection? The ultimate gift of Sri Aurobindo's philosophy lies in its recognition that the disconnection we experience in contemporary life isn't a permanent condition or evidence of humanity's spiritual decline, but rather a temporary phase in consciousness evolution, a necessary period of apparent separation that allows us to develop individual awareness and authentic choice before reuniting with universal consciousness at a higher level of understanding and creative capacity. This perspective transforms our relationship with the isolation, anxiety, and meaninglessness that characterize so much modern experience, revealing them as symptoms of consciousness that's outgrowing narrow identifications with ego, nationality, and consumer identity, whilst awakening to its true nature as expressions of cosmic intelligence, seeking ever greater forms of beauty, truth, and conscious collaboration. The freelance journalist investigating stories about social justice and environmental protection discovers that her work serves not only public awareness, but also her own evolution from detached observer to conscious participant in humanity's collective, learning about how to create more equitable and sustainable forms of civilization. This evolutionary understanding naturally leads to what we might call purposeful living, the recognition that our individual circumstances, talents, and life experiences are actually perfect opportunities for consciousness to explore and express specific aspects of its infinite creative potential. The massage therapist, providing healing touch for clients recovering from physical injuries and emotional trauma, learns that her work becomes most effective when she approaches each session as sacred service rather than merely technical intervention, allowing her natural compassion and intuitive understanding of the body's wisdom to inform therapeutic techniques that address not only muscular tension but also the energetic and emotional patterns that create and maintain physical symptoms. The data analyst processing information for climate research and environmental policy development recognizes that her analytical skills serve humanity's urgent need for accurate understanding of ecological systems and the impacts of human activity on planetary health, transforming what might otherwise be purely technical work into conscious contribution to our species. Learning about sustainable relationship with Earth. The ancient wisdom that informs this philosophy provides tested methods for cultivating the inner stability and clarity needed to navigate contemporary challenges without being overwhelmed by their complexity or apparent urgency. The mindfulness instructor teaching meditation and stress reduction techniques to healthcare workers and essential service employees draws upon contemplative traditions that have helped human beings find peace and wisdom throughout history, whilst adapting these practices to serve the specific pressures and opportunities of modern professional contexts. The community garden coordinator helping urban residents grow food and build neighborhood connections combines practical knowledge about soil, plants, and seasonal cycles with understanding of how participation in natural processes can restore people's sense of belonging to the living earth and to each other in relationships of mutual care and interdependence. Perhaps most remarkably, this approach reveals that the apparent fragmentation and specialization that characterize modern society actually provide unprecedented opportunities for consciousness to explore diverse forms of expression and service, whilst maintaining awareness of the underlying unity that connects all activities and relationships in a vast web of creative collaboration. The biomedical engineer developing assistive devices for people with disabilities combines technical innovation with compassionate understanding of human needs, discovering that her most effective designs emerge when engineering principles serve deeper recognition of each person's inherent dignity and potential for contribution regardless of physical limitations. The public librarian helping community members access information, technology, and educational resources approaches her work as service to democratic participation and lifelong learning that strengthens both individual development and collective intelligence. The revolutionary implications of this philosophy extend far beyond personal healing and fulfillment to encompass our capacity to participate consciously in the emergence of more enlightened forms of human organization and global cooperation. The International Development Coordinator working with communities affected by climate change and economic displacement learns that sustainable solutions emerge through combining practical assistance with respect for local wisdom and cultural values, recognizing that lasting change happens when external support serves indigenous capacity for adaptation and self-determination rather than imposing solutions designed according to foreign assumptions and priorities. The renewable energy policy analyst researching approaches to carbon reduction and sustainable development discovers that effective environmental legislation requires understanding both technical possibilities and social dynamics, bringing together scientific knowledge and political wisdom in service of humanity's transition to more conscious relationship with planetary systems. The depth of transformation that becomes available through sustained engagement with this philosophy reveals itself through the gradual dissolution of the artificial boundaries that separate personal growth from social contribution, individual well-being from collective healing, and spiritual development from practical effectiveness in addressing contemporary challenges. The grief counselor supporting families through loss of loved ones to illness, accident, or violence learns that her professional training becomes most healing when informed by spiritual understanding of death as natural transition and love as the eternal connection that transcends physical separation, providing comfort and meaning that purely psychological approaches cannot offer. The urban planning student, designing transportation systems and housing developments that serve diverse community needs, approaches city planning as opportunity to create environments that support both individual privacy and social connection, recognizing that physical infrastructure either enhances or diminishes people's capacity for authentic relationship and collaborative problem-solving. The ultimate recognition that emerges through this path is that consciousness itself is the connecting thread that weaves together all apparently separate experiences, relationships, and activities in a seamless tapestry of ongoing creation and discovery. Every moment of authentic connection, whether with another person, with the natural world, with creative work, or with the mystery of existence itself, becomes both personal healing and contribution to the collective awakening that Sri Aurobindo recognized as humanity's evolutionary destiny and greatest opportunity. As we reach the conclusion of this exploration into ancient wisdom for modern disconnection, my heart overflows with gratitude for every soul who recognizes that the ache of isolation and meaninglessness that defines so much contemporary experience is actually the birth pangs of humanity's next stage of conscious evolution. The philosophy that Sri Aurobindo offered over a century ago wasn't just theoretical insight but practical guidance for navigating the very challenges we face today, the sense of disconnection from nature, from each other, and from purposes larger than personal ambition that creates the spiritual crisis underlying our social, environmental, and political difficulties. If these insights about reconnection and conscious participation have touched something real in your own experience, if you can feel the possibility of finding authentic meaning and genuine connection within, rather than despite, your modern circumstances, then you're already part of the quiet revolution of consciousness that's transforming individual lives and collective possibilities simultaneously. I would be deeply honored if you'd continue this exploration with us by subscribing to our channel. But what moves me most is hearing about your own journey of discovering connection and purpose in contemporary life. What aspects of modern existence have felt most isolating or meaningless to you? And where have you found unexpected sources of nourishment and authentic purpose? What work, relationships, or creative pursuits have helped you feel most connected to something larger than individual concerns? How has your sense of disconnection actually become a doorway to deeper understanding and more conscious living? Please share your experiences and insights in the comments below. Your story of finding meaning and connection illuminates possibilities for all of us who are learning that the ancient wisdom, traditions, and revolutionary spiritual insights are not separate from modern life, but rather keys to transforming contemporary existence into expressions of consciousness, creativity, and love. This isn't just about understanding spiritual philosophy or feeling temporarily inspired. It's about recognizing that we live in extraordinary times when individual awakening and collective transformation can happen simultaneously through the simple choice to live consciously within whatever circumstances we find ourselves. Bringing ancient wisdom into contemporary service and discovering that the spiritual path leads not away from the world but deeper into authentic engagement with life itself.